Hello everyone, let's get started. This video will show you some simple ways to create an artistic plant ornament, both as an outline and in a flat relief style. Watch closely, even if you don't have drawing skills or experience. First, draw a circle like this. There you go. Next up, pay close attention to I'll show you some simple techniques that will help you. So far, we've made 3 individual leaves, then we added another one, and you can see there's one right here. And one more over here, moving on. From here, we draw out and bring them together. Take it from here. Starting with 1, and then 2. We flip it over. Well, first there is 1, and then there is 2. You can do it in this simple way. At this stage, there are several methods. One way is to cut along the outline of the ornament with a knife, then use chisels to shape it. There's an even simpler way. You take a gouge, a curved chisel, or you can use a 45-degree or 90-degree V-tool. So what do? First, we outline your ornament. You can go slightly outside the line. When you get to this point, what do? Pause for a moment. So, you just keep going along exactly like this. I'll show you the difference. For example, with a gouge. Makes sense, right? Let's take an example, the V-tool. You stop at 45 degrees. Pause. That's 45 degrees. If you look at how it's done with a 90-degree tool, 90 degrees, we understand perfectly. If you haven't learned, you stop. But honestly, the best thing is to use a gouge. Just take it according to the width and follow the outline. That way it'll be easier to cut the line later and accordingly to do the clearing. So the V-tool is in place, and what do we do next? We rotate. To get there. Also, after pulling it a bit, we turn the workpiece. Relax your wrist, and pause. I'm showing you a simple method, a straightforward way that will help you one way or another. What to do to master the basic principles. First, you outline the contour. Then you return to the starting point. So we don't start from the center, nor from these actual leaves. We just imagine it and do it like this. Here's the groove. There are 1, 2, not inside. Everything goes away from you. The principle of building a cabbage pattern. A fundamental principle for young school children. You could say that. Once you have finished carefully making that initial cut line, now we really need to work on freeing our beautiful flower from all of this remaining excess material part. You can do this, for example, with narrower profiles or with wider ones. In other words, use what you have. Presumably a 3-2 profile. And just like this, along the line, little by little, without rushing, we free it up. I want to emphasize for beginners, these parts here, you'll even them out later, and you keep working like this all the way around. The next step we're tackling is these 1, 2, 3 outermost petals. For now, we're not touching these other petals. You can mostly trim them with the 3rd or even the 4th profile. That is, unless we're talking about, say, bending asters or something like that. It's a very subtle and light selection, a cut or a cut line. Also, in general, when working on projects and tasks of this specific nature, people tend to frequently utilize these semicircular tools. They take them, go over the area, and remove material. For the most part. That's exactly how I make the indentation. Just to emphasize, this video is for beginners. But since a complete beginner might not have, let's say, those specific kinds of radii, someone who's just starting out might only have much simpler profiles, like profiles 2, 3, or even 4, which are more common. So, little by little, you just take and gradually remove all our leaves, step by step, especially in places where the chisel can't reach. Ideally, you should have, for example, sizes 10, 15, and 20, respectively. Wider ones are for getting into hard-to-reach spots, and with a narrower profile, you can do more precise deepening. Look, a lot of people just don't know about this, and even those who do this kind of work often don't know either. When you get this kind of mess, what should you mostly do? You put the knife in, for example, and cut it again. That's one way. Here's another way. For example, I take an angled chisel at 35 to 45 degrees and, for example, go along the outline. That's 2. Actually, you need to pick the right profile. Let's say the 2nd profile. And you do all these actions by, say, imagining it, making a mock-up, and in the same way, you set it here. And cut it. Of course, you might ask, why bother if you can just do it with a knife? The effect is different, because when you cut the line, the result is sharp, very sharp. But when we use, say, the 3rd profile, it looks like it's coming out from under the leaf itself. As a result, the element itself stands out, so it's generally best to do it this way. Get used to working like this. Also, when we pick out a leaf here, say from this part, we need to do it this way. Here, we gradually deepen it step by step, and then we go a bit lower, but we don't touch this top point. We just lower the depth a bit here, slowly adding a little extra depth here, just a little bit at a time. This video is for beginners. We've carefully lowered down our very outermost protective leaves, and now we start to see the cabbage effect. And just like that, we simply lower it a bit. Taking our time little by little. We're working with the crane. Here we have a cut line. Here we don't cut all the way through. We lower it more here. Don't touch this one, the outermost one. I'm showing a simple method for beginners without any complications. As we gradually get much closer to the very center, it is definitely best to make the overall size a bit smaller than before. I'm also explaining why it's necessary to leave some height in these areas, because later on we'll be working here in a certain way, just like this, gently. This gives it shape. This removal creates a slight curve, so when we work along the edges, the leaf bends downward from underneath. Here, under the leaf, we lower it. A little deeper. A simple method for beginners. So look, we've roughed out this basic shape, and basically, here it is. We've got it. Now comes the most interesting part. You take a pencil and start the sketch to design it. That's how I make sketches, by setting. It has a somewhat distinct and unique form, so to speak, because we have this extensive scientific research available. As an illustration of the cuts, the entire process involved here is truly fascinating and quite interesting. So now we are going to carefully go over everything together. Our whole flower, basically. Just like this here, why is it not practical to form the keel and the cuts? Because once we have already gone ahead and chosen our specific settings, just like we are doing right here, we have it all set up. Now look, I am just taking the time to show you the different approaches for method 2, method 3, and method 4 as well. So as you can see, right here is where we have a little bit of a drop occurring in the process. In videos for beginners, we see these simple cuts, right? It's great that the leaf transforms into a slightly more beautiful shape. It is the exact same thing here, just go very lightly at first, bend it just a little bit, and then, once we are ready to show it, we can carefully bring it out over here and right over here as well. So here's the excess on the side, and here as well. 1, 2, 1, 2. That's why we didn't remove too much here, because when we trim it now, it'll get even deeper. You can also add here, say on a lower level. This plus the extra leaves, or basically if we add more, it'll look even fuller. Let's get started. So, we take the flag knife, and not from this part, but for the softer areas. On the contrary, from the stronger side, we make a cut from here, there it is, and then lower it down a bit. From the other side, go ahead and do the exact same thing, step number 1. Two, further. And so we work. Throughout our entire sketch, And as you can clearly see right here in front of us, it looks absolutely stunning and incredibly beautiful, and it is also remarkably neat and perfectly organized in every single way. Actually, I think it might be better if we just take our time and not rush into anything just yet. So basically, the way you simply delete it is by farewell to your wallet. So here you are. This is how it'll work for you. Cleaning, leveling, etc. Everything a little later. Now, when you reach this specific point in the process, the primary focus shifts entirely toward performing these relatively straightforward and basic physical manipulations to ensure everything is set up correctly. So here we get it. Like this. Right there. That's it, a little. You can do this at an angle. Further. Here a little. That's how it is. They left it almost in a semicircle. Further, pencil. In general dissection, simply start by drawing the lines 1, 2, and 3, and then, right over here, we repeat that sequence of 1, 2, and 3, followed by another 1, 2, and 3. After that, we are going to add a further set of 1, 2, and 3 to the composition. Next, we carefully took a semicircle and established a specific radius to work with. Right here in this section, we worked very carefully and precisely like this, making sure every detail is correct and there is exactly what we need for the final result. Do it. Harder. Cool first. In general, ideally you need a tool here, small. There. Would be suitable here, by the way, with a beveled head. Why with a beveled edge? Because I need to undercut here, and I'll be touching the opposite part. The corner, set it in place. The outline, you can round it off, or you don't have to round it off. So I gave you a look at the center inside and how it looks. Detailing is a must by means of dissection. So these guides here, we dissected them a bit like this. So that's how we clean up everywhere after detailing. This video is for beginners. Let me repeat, I'm saying this on purpose so that those who already know how to do it don't get smart about it. In other words, using simple actions, a simple method. So you end up with staining it with wood stain. Guys, I'm doing this quickly, not cleaning it up. You, on the other hand, should clean up your whole composition. So this is how we apply the stain. That's how we stained it. Then you even it out, trim it. Basically, as they say, you bring to a clean finish. Let's break it down. Was there anything complicated about it? There was nothing complicated at all. It took very little time, and we ended up with the result, a simple composition like this. So for the next step, we're just going to let this sit here and wait for it to dry completely before we move on. Once it dries, I'll apply another coat. Basically, you can take some sandpaper and then do a very light touch. Sanding. It's a bit rough. I'll just lightly go over it so you get the idea. But you really need to wait until your stain is completely dry, otherwise it won't work. You'll get this kind of effect, like I have now, some fuzziness. But overall, if you just lightly sand it, even a little, it'll look really unique. That's the whole composition. But if you sand while it's still wet, the fibers will rise, so keep that in mind. But if you want to sand it all, I recommend doing it later. So, for example, after you've already stained it. On the stained, not flowers, or rather, on the stained parts, you can actually apply a light wash of another color, like a wood stain, or for example, acrylic paints. So basically, you can use bronze, gold, or silver. It all depends on what you're good at. There are tons of variations and options, so you can experiment in all sorts of ways. Let's sum it up. Was there anything difficult? No. Outlines, carving, selection. Selection, selection, selection. This video is strictly for beginners, using only the simplest methods.